More than 40,000 Palestinians have now been killed in Gaza, a majority of whom are civilians. And these numbers are from the Palestinian Ministry of Health, but they are backed up by the United States, by international organizations. Humanitarian conditions in Gaza have degraded so much that diseases like polio and hepatitis A are now spreading. We have seen countless children be orphaned. We have seen countless mothers lose their children. How much is too much, sir? At what point is it time to end this war?
Before he speaks out, I would like you to really pay attention because he's about to expose some uncomfortable truth regarding his propaganda on his ongoing humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. His response is riddled with contradictions, falsehood, and a level of collusiveness that demands a full takedown.
Well, we'll end the war when we achieve our war goals of making sure that Hamas can't repeat such atrocities. But we're fighting this war in a just war with just means. In fact, with means that no other army has ever fought. No other army has taken the precautions that Israel has taken, sometimes at great risk, to make sure that we minimize the number of casualties. You talked about polio. We enabled now massive vaccination of polio. We want 90% of the Gazan people of Gaza vaccinated. I think 200,000 I think were vaccinated today. We've put in 1 million tons of food, 1 million tons of aid, 700,000 tons of food. That's unheard of. We've taken, because we think that every civilian death is a tragedy. For Hamas, every civilian death is a strategy. For us, it's a tragedy. There are 1.4 million people in Gaza. They moved from the north to the south. You're going to have thousands, 20,000 killed. You're going to have a catastrophe, a humanitarian catastrophe. They have no place to go, no food to eat. Now report honestly, because here's what happened. They all left. They went to the humanitarian zone, which is 2 miles away, less, on the beach. They have tents. We supplied tents for 150,000 people. The aid agencies supplied the rest, and some of them carried their own tents. They have a place. We supplied water lines, sewage lines, food. There's more to be done, medical. So now we know how many people were killed, how many terrorists, because we counted them. And we just passed 2,000. Terrorists, body counts of terrorists. The people left. How many civilians died? I asked the commander of the division that did the Rafah operation and the Philadelphia corridor. He said, Prime Minister, there are hardly any civilian deaths because everybody left. They heeded our warnings. But he said there were probably 24, and most of them occurred, 24, and most of them occurred when one of our bombs hit a Hamas ammunition depot that was planted inside a residential area. 40 people died, about 20 were terrorists, but 20 were civilians. And he said that's most of the deaths. That's the lowest ratio of non-combatants to combatants in the history of urban warfare. That's it. Now report honestly, because you accused us of something that is outrageous. And in fact, the accusations against us are outrageously false. Humanitarian aid? 1 million trucks of aid, 1 million tons of aid, 700,000 tons of food, a deliberate starvation policy. You can say anything. Doesn't make it true. You repeat a lie over and over and over again. It assumes the cachet of self-evident truth, but it's false. Israel is doing, and the Israeli army is doing, something that no other army has done in history and will continue to do that. I'm not going to change my policies. Humanitarian policies, vaccination policies, combat policies to minimize civilian casualties.
If you cringed as much as I have listening to him, I gotta say a few things. Netanyahu dismisses the death toll reported by Palestinian Ministry of Health numbers incorporated by the US and international organizations as fictitious. So Mr. Netanyahu, 40,000 people, 38,000 civilians, including countless children, are what? Imaginary? Hidden under the rubble? Their lives reduced to collateral damage in your just war? You can't just have a wand and label these numbers fiction because they're inconvenient for your narrative. You claim 2,000 Hamas fighters were killed, and that's supposed to balance out the 38,000 civilians? That's a 19-to-1 ratio. Your numbers don't add up. It's basic math, sir. How can you say this is the lowest ratio of non-combatants to combatants in urban warfare? Either your commanders lied to you or you're making the mockery of truth up. Not to mention the countless of lives that have been unaccounted for that are still under the rubble of apartment buildings, mosques, churches, shopping centers, hospitals, strips, restaurants, homes, shelters that has been obliterated to mere dust. Let's talk about your humanitarian efforts for a second. You boasted about enabling polio vaccinations for Gazans. Wow, so magnanimous. Vaccinations for children you've orphaned, living in tents after their homes were bombed to rubble, and now you're bombing tents because you claim quote-unquote Hamas is there. Is this your idea of justice? When you block food, water, medical aid, you're not a humanitarian. You're an architect of suffering. 1 million tons of aid, you say. Great PR. Yet, we still see starvation, disease, and suffering plastered across every social media platform. And let's not forget the mental health toll on your own forces. IDF soldiers, believe it or not, are reportedly facing skyrocketing suicide rates. It seems they can't stomach the horrors they're being ordered to carry out. You say civilian death tolls are a tragedy for Israel, but a strategy for Hamas. Here's a thought. If civilians are dying in such catastrophic numbers under your military watch, maybe you're not a moral high ground you pretend to be. Netanyahu is quickly running out of excuses. The ICJ arrest warrant isn't fiction, and neither is the rising death toll. This isn't just a war, it's a massacre disguised as policy. You can dress it up with numbers and PR buzzwords, but the world is seeing through the facade. To our audience, stay tuned as we continue to call out the double standards and hold leaders accountable for their actions as we rise together to expose the propaganda. Please don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Together, let's cut through the lies and shine the light through on the truth.